Hi, and welcome to the AIAA UNSW Speaker Series. I'm your host, Winnie, and I'm a third-year aerospace engineering and physics student, and I am AIAA's events director. Today, we are joined by our special guest, Dr. Jason Held, who is the CEO of Saber Astronautics, and it's really nice to have you with us today. So could you give a short introduction about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason. I'm the CEO of Saber Astronautics. I am originally from the US, as you can probably hear from the accent. I worked on a variety of projects like Hubble and ISS, some older school projects. Moved to Australia in 2004 to get a master's, ended up getting a PhD and settling down and marrying an Australian and founded Saber Astronautics, and when I finished my PhD at Sydney Uni, and the rest is history.
Nice. Okay, so what is Saber Astronautics? Can you give a brief summary to people who haven't heard about it?
Sure. It's we do space operations and satellite control, space traffic management, things like that as well, and we do flight software. Our motivation is the democratization of space, making space easy to use, easy to be a part of. We want to make space as easy as driving a car. It's kind of what we want to do.
Yeah. So how was it founded, and what was kind of the inspiration behind it?
Oh boy, like a space company is something I always wanted to do, right? I mean, the thing is, when I was in the States, I started talking about it with a couple of my friends. Just how these things tend to start off, when I moved to Australia, we were still friends. So when I graduated, I called them up, and I had some new friends from Sydney Uni as well. So we had a bit of a mix of people that I knew from Space Command back in the day, people that I knew from my engineering days and civilian space, and then some of my fellow PhD students and pals, engineering pals from the Sydney scene, I had to pitch to them. I had to say, hey, let's do this business together, and I think it could do really well, but also solve some really good problems. They all agreed to do it, and we had a big party to celebrate, and then get started working. That's how we started.
So looking back at when it all started till now, how far would you say Saber Astronautics has come over the years?
Well, 2008, it's 2021. We're a successful and stable business. We've got about 45 employees. We've got 2 labs. We've got a lab in Colorado, which doubles as an operations center. So we've got a satellite mission control center in Boulder, Colorado. And we have an integration team with the US Space Force. And we actually have we're one of the only Australian companies with products that actually sells into the US market. And on the Australian side, we've got the Mission Control Center that was won from the Australian Space Agency MCC grant, and that's up and running in Adelaide right now, flying. The first satellite out of that Mission Control Center was deployed last night, so we're trying to talk to it and tracking all the other satellites. It's really exciting. So I mean, just looking back on it, I didn't do all the things that I thought I would be able to do as quickly as I thought I'd be able to do. I will say that. Starting a space company from Australia in 2008 is very different than starting it today. There was no support. Nobody knew what space was in the business community, so we didn't get any investment. So we've come a long way. A completely bootstrapped company, making really good money, solving really interesting problems. Pretty proud of the team. It was myself in my apartment in Manly. That's how it started. It was my friends were all virtual. I was living in Manly, living the dream on the beach. Me and the new wife. And I didn't have any gray hair back then, right? But I was going to the beach, going to the pub, living life, good Aussie life, building our first product. Just a small group of us. Now we've got real things going, and it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've actually come a really long way for, Australia who had basically no idea about space. And so what do you see in the Australian aerospace and economy in the next 10 to 20 years?
Uh, um,
Do you think we'll get our own astronauts or not yet?
I'm pushing very hard for this actually. Um, we've got a few things moving on the Saber side for astronauts specifically. Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
But yeah, sure. Yeah, keep it quiet, right? But yeah, that's definitely something of interest. We know the space agency people in the agency want to do it. The Commonwealth, has said that it's not really the priority today, but everybody kind of sees it happening in the future. But as a community, the Australian space community finally has, we got 100 space companies now that most of them are startups or were startups. There's a group of companies that have grown out of the muck. And for a while, I think from 2016 to 2018, we were the fastest growing space startup community in the world per capita in the world. Only Silicon Valley had a higher success rate than Australia, which says a lot. Actually, 25 million people in this country. So as a nation, the space agency tells you we're 4 billion going to 12 billion as far as a space economy in Australia. So we're tripling in the next 10 years. The way we see that is, I think that number is going to be a lot higher. But I think the way that money is spent is also going to be more in the favor of us, because the Australian government is now saying, instead of buying products from overseas, let's actually build it here. So people like yourselves who are students third year, you said you're a third year student, you're going to have a job for sure. It's a hot market right now, and everybody's hiring. It's a really good time to get into space.
Yeah, especially when I started uni at like 2019, and I remember people were saying like, you're not gonna get a job. Like Australia doesn't have any space thing going on, and people were talking about how they were going to go to America and like get a green card, or I think they wanted to join the military, so then they could then get a job in aerospace. So, and then recently the government funded our space sector. So,
yeah.
Things change.
Things changed, and right now they're changing for the better.
Yeah.
I used to fight really hard against this very argument, because there were the people who were pushing this story were people who did not want Australia to have its own space economy. It's if you think about 4 billion a year is how much we spend consistently every year up until recently. Now that number's going up, but 4 billion a year is still a good amount of money, right? So people would either people I used to argue against in the community, because they would be lobbyists from very large businesses from overseas that would say, don't build it yourself, you'll never have a future here yourself. And a lot of the professors kind of called on to that. It's hard to get money as a professor, and so the professor teaching the student would tell the student there's no money in space. And back then, oh man, I was talking to investors, and they were just like, if you don't have the next .NET 2.0 dog walking app, they wouldn't even talk to you, right? And so we were really weird compared, but it's so different now. It's so different. Investment groups like Saber just spun out an incubator for space companies. So if you're a fourth year student, or if you're a PhD student and you have some ideas and want to create your own company, we will help you. And we know investors that will put money into you. And we teach the investors what a space company looks like. So it's a totally different environment. It's 10 times better than it used to be.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like a lot of engineering students, need to develop the skills to be able to do business in a way. They need to be able to pitch to like non-engineering people, what engineering is. And I think that's one of the really like difficult parts of the space sector as well, of it, growing, because the students are just like, oh, like we want to make this. Okay, but like how then will you pitch it? So yeah, it's great to hear that Saber is doing that and encouraging, students to come up with ideas.
Yep. Thank you. We have competitions. We will give you money. We will give you money for your ideas.
Yeah, That's good to hear.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is we did the pilot program last year. It's called Quest for Blue.
Oh,
So
yes, yes. Your assistant sent that to AIAA. Will there be more information about that later on?
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And we're gearing up for this year's round. I think in about a month or two. I think the dates are going to be in November, which we're trying to schedule so it doesn't interfere with your exam times, because we know that's very important. But yeah, we gave $5,000 in prizes. First prize is $2,000 for your business plan. We teach you as part of it. We give you training, and it's for us. It's a lot of fun. When I was when Saber was a startup, if I had a couple of grand, that would have gone a long way. When you're a startup, it's not a lot of money, but you can buy a computer, you can buy some equipment, you can do some work with that. It's a bit of a seed. It's a very small seed, and it shows validation. I think the winners from last year were out in Scotland. A Scotland uni group won it last year. The second place was out in Melbourne, and we had another finalist out of UNSW. Right. So and the Americans came last, which is hilarious. The Americans, they all came dead last. They just didn't know what they were doing. But UK, Australia, very entrepreneurial mindsets.
Wow. Yeah, that brings me to think about because we're part of the UNSW AIAA UNSW Rocketry team, and we've been looking into nitrous oxide fuel, and our goal is to reach 30,000 feet. But that's more part of like the Australian rocketry competition. So what are your thoughts on hybrid rocketry and its involvement in the future? And is there any advice you could give to our student-led team?
Yeah, my advice is quite simple. Build something that other people haven't. Don't just do what you see. You can start off by doing what you see. It's a good way to learn. And hybrid rockets are good because you can do some element of throttling, although it's got its risks as well. If your solid component has a problem, it could break off, and you really have to have your solid propellant secured and sorted throughout the duration of the burn. When I was a PhD student, I founded the Rocketry Society at Sydney Uni.
Oh, okay.
This is an interesting story because this is kind of the group that founded that.
I did not know this. Oh my God.
No, it's well, we all graduated. We moved on with our lives, and so myself and a couple of the other Saber co-founders. So one of my best friends, he and I founded the Rocketry Club, and he didn't care. He was just having fun. It was a chance to meet other people and have fun. And we were just started shooting little model rockets, little SD's model rockets in the backyard. But then we decided, let's actually make something with some academic oomph. And we picked an apogee kick motor style because you don't have to launch to orbit. It's not about your altitude as much as it is your thrust, your reliability, your cost, your mass, these other characteristics. And rockets are a really scalable object. So if you can make an apogee kick motor size, maybe 2,000 newtons, you could get funding for that. You could grow it, and then if you want to scale that up to a bigger rocket engine to get the altitudes you're looking for, then you could do that. But the core science behind it is things like fluid flows, temperature management, and mass management, and power, all these kind of like real engineering things. So we said, let's make a premix rocket engine, which is one of the most dangerous things you could do. You know what a premix is, right? It was a bipropellant. It was actually it was liquid. It was methane. No, it was ethanol. It was industrial ethanol.
How did the uni let you get away with that? Our university is like, no, you can't.
I didn't ask him.
Oh, okay.
Why did you do something so crazy as ask the university for permission? Well, all right, no, it's more than that. So one thing about my background, I mentioned I was in the military. Okay, so I did about 10 years. The first 5 years after graduation, I was in the field artillery. And so I have a service record that shows experience with explosives. So we did this through this student group. I walked around campus, posted signs that said new student group, Rocket Sock, sign here. I had a photo of a guy flying a fake jetpack. It was just for fun, you know, and we had all these signups. So they couldn't really do anything. And we were doing our own sausage sizzles and things like that, things you do, right? And have a bit of cash. And we started doing the Apogee kick motor project, and the university tried to shut us down. And I just didn't give a shit. You know, it's just, they said, you can't do this. Of course I could do this. Legally, they could kick us off campus. But they said, how are you qualified? So I showed them my military credentials. And they said, how are you qualified? What if it explodes? I said, it's going to be glorious. Think of how big it's going to be a great explosion. Nobody will get hurt, but it's going to be beautiful, right? You have to prove that, well, first of all, you have to assume it's going to explode. Okay, as part of your I did a proper safety analysis. You know, these aren't hard to do. I brought in industry experts, but very softly. So our supplier was Bach, which was supplying the nitrous oxide, the liquid NOx. We had LNOx for the oxidant, and we had ethanol for the fuel. So we brought them in to help us out with just to make sure everything was safe and nice having their name on it. But there's nothing they could do. We were doing some crazy, stupid stuff too. Like we brought some of the fuel to someone's backyard and made a de facto engine and took a mash and, you know, one of these, I wouldn't recommend it. But we made sure it was safe from the people. So you separate it from the people. So when it blows up, you know, you blow up a can, you don't blow up a person. And things got really interesting when we had, the group was really popular. We ended up having like 60 people in it at one point. And the Australian Defense noticed, and then they gave us money for the project. And then when we got funding from them, the university turned around and they said, if you funnel this money through us, we will give you your own lab space, we'll give you courses that you can teach. And that was actually the start of the Sydney University Space Engineering Laboratory. And everybody who graduated from there went off to Planet Labs, to MIT, to wherever. Really good.
Because I had no idea you're the founder, and you know, like I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity today.
No, don't. This is your time to shine.
No, no, I'm not shining. I'm just, you know, trying to get through uni.
Look, the advice is, and the reason why it worked, and the reason why it was, the success of it was I mean, the rocket engine, we brought it up to cold fire test. So from a technical standpoint, you have already gone further than we have, okay? So don't think of it in the same way you are. What I would encourage you and your members to do would be to find a part of rocket science that is not commonly done, is not understood. Aggressively look for gaps in human knowledge. And it's hard because everybody will tell you this is the right way to do things. Your professors are going to give you a baseline of engineering, but there are going to be gaps in what they know. This is normal. This is life, right? So for us, after the premix rocket engine, do you know what a premix is, by the way? Have you heard the term before in here?
I have a brief idea of it, but I don't know the details.
You have your fuel in your fuel tank. You have your oxygen tank. Normally, what you have is a you would have some pumps and a whole bunch of lines, like maybe dozens of lines for your fuel, dozens of lines for your oxidant, and into an injector individually secured in. And then you have a combustion chamber where you got to do your sparky thing and light it up. And then the force and the thrust goes out the business end of a rocket. Okay. A premix rocket engine says you're going to have your mixing before your injector. The advantage is you can save all the mass and complexity as well. You don't want to have 100 fuel lines going in. You want one fuel line, one oxidant line coming into one little chamber, instead of a big combustion chamber, you got a smaller combustion chamber. So you're reducing mass. But the problem you have is it's really easy to detonate, because if your reaction is slower, so if the speed of fuel going out of that injector is slower than the speed of your reaction, you are going to detonate. So you got to play with the temperatures. The hotter the temperature, the faster the reaction. So, but the faster the reaction, the more thrust. So it's this kind of give and take. And your fuel lines have to have really good mechatronics. So fast, like we're looking for fast reactions. So you could think of, by picking up a subject, a topic that has real academic salt to it in the field.
So do you mean like kind of like a thesis that we look into?
We had several thesis projects out of this. One of the mechatronics thesis was a top thesis in the university that year. Look, the guy's name is Nathan Parrott. If you want to look him up, he's now Saber's U.S. director. We got back together. We got the band back together after a few years. But we also, because we're doing this project, we're also given the University CubeSat, and that also had the same approach, right? Even though it's a CubeSat, it's like, oh, we've seen CubeSats before. We said, all right, what hasn't been solved? And I had one student, a good friend of mine, came up, and he was an undergrad, and he's like, look, I'm bored of all the thesis topics that professors are giving me. I said, well, what do you want to do? Pick something that nobody's done. And he said, well, what hasn't been solved? Well, you could use a spacecraft structure is normally the ground in electrical sense. It's usually used as the ground. Can you actually use that to generate power as a secondary power source? And he went into an investigation, and that ended up becoming an electrodynamic tether project, which won the Engineers Australia Prize in 2006. It was a top thesis in the country. It was like 600-page honors thesis, if you can imagine that. Bit of overkill, honestly. But that's the seed. The seed is you find something that nobody's done. It becomes thesis projects. It doesn't have to. The process of investigating it should be in a thesis-like sense. If you find some professors that want to work with you, that's ideal, because then everybody has fun. The professor has fun. They'll help out, like teaching you things that they know, and then the search for what is unknown becomes the fun part of it. And it's a bit of science because using the scientific method, but also as an engineer, it's freaking awesome, right? I mean, because you're really actively, even as a young student, in a position where you can improve the capability of our species, right? With this, just one smart, you're picking a small part of it, but you're picking a real part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of students don't feel like they feel like really upset when they don't get good grades, especially in engineering. So as someone who's been in the industry, and also you've been in academia, you've taught before, what advice would you give to the students who actually want to succeed in engineering, but they're not doing well academically, and that's how they put all their focus in academia?
Yeah, I read that question when you sent me the advance last night. I hear it a lot. I've lived it. My advice is you're not alone. I barely graduated high school. I was a C student. I wasn't a great student. I wasn't a terrible student. No, I wasn't a great student, right, as an undergrad. It doesn't matter. It matters the first year after you graduate. After that, nobody cares, as long as you get the diploma. It will matter if you are, and I worked hard. It wasn't like I was partying all the time, and I deserved every C I got. I wasn't proud of it. I'm not saying it in that light. You always want to get the best grades you can, but if you're trying your best and you're not making it, that's okay. I didn't find my academic legs until I was 26. When you are 18, 19, 20, 21, your brain is still developing. It doesn't feel like it. It is the way you learn when you're in your young 20s does evolve by the time you're in your mid to late 20s. and it is easier. If you're not getting it now, you do the best you can, you graduate, go into the workforce for a year or two, give yourself some time, and it gets better. The other side of it is I test very poorly. I hate, or back then I did. Nowadays, you know, it doesn't matter. But I mean, you know, when I was doing training through like technical courses through the military, we had quite a few of those, and then working in my PhD later on was the easiest academics I'd ever done, because there weren't any tests for me other than presenting your research and following the scientific method, and it's more of a creative process tied in with the logic at the end, rather than memorization of equations and things that are really kind of focused on at undergrad. So that's the advice. Hang in there, it gets better.
Yeah. So you said that as a student, you liked, you know, going out and having fun, and then it wasn't until later on when you realized, oh, you know, like it's time to go into academia, time to take my studies seriously.
No, I took it very seriously. I partied. Like, I mean, I had fun. I was at, look, I went to an all-male military school in the United States called Virginia Military Institute. This is a hardcore 4-year military program where you get commissioned at the end. It's kind of like ADFA. You're running around, they're giving you push-ups all the time and things like that. And we all worked our butts off. We worked hard, we played hard. It wasn't from lack of effort. It was simply, I sucked at memorization. My brain and memorization wouldn't click. In half the classes, you got to memorize stuff. Yeah, the context would come in with some courses. I did reasonably well at math. I did very poorly at physics. You know, and I didn't think I could do space, so I ended up with a computer science. And when I was in my late 20s, my passion for space was still there. So, you know, I started picking up books on my own and started learning on my own and taking the exams on my own without any time limit, without any teacher, without any pressure to succeed, because I was already in the workforce. I didn't really, it was more about improving myself rather than in solving problems rather than meeting a grade. And that changes the mentality, is all I was saying.
Yeah, you hear that, everyone? It's never too late. Okay.
Plenty of time. There's no, do the best you can. That's the answer. Do the best you can. Don't stress it. Try to enjoy these years. You know, give yourself some life balance. You know, do it while you're young.
Yeah, especially like you should definitely do something you're passionate about, because you eventually realize that you're going to burn out if you don't.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree with that.
So what was your experience like at the United States? How is it different from Australia?
From a space community, or?
Both, actually.
Both. Americans tend to be a bit louder, a bit more, I think, Australian, from the Australian perspective, a bit more rah-rah, a bit more cheery in terms of promotion of their work. It's a huge market. So if you mess up in the States, you can try again and nobody's going to know your name, which is nice. Australia is a very small community. Everybody knows everybody else. It's easy to be successful in Australia in the sense that you can build something from nothing here in a way. It's a very different path from the States. I think you're 3 degrees of separation from any decision maker in Australia, and Australia is also a lot more insular. That's the flip side to that. So when you are successful, there's going to be other people who don't want you to keep going with your success because they'll feel constrained. And this is a bit of a holdover in the space community in Australia because we had so many years without any success at all. There's a competitive nature to Australia that's not as strong in the United States. I don't know. I love both countries, you know, from a cultural standpoint. But you could certainly, right now, being in Australia, succeed very easily if you've got some good ideas and a good work ethic. And in the United States, you could get early success, but it's harder to rise above the crop in the United States because there's just so many other players, so much more competition. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. And I think with US, especially with space, there's like a lot of commercialism, which brings me into the topic with space sustainability. And I know that's one of the values that Saber Astronautics has. And yeah, could you talk to us a bit more about that, about the projects you guys are working on?
Okay, so we have products and services. The service that we're focused on is space traffic and space operations as a service. So if you're going to make your satellite, and a lot of people, especially universities, are good at making a satellite, but you've never flown it before, we bring the expertise and the tools to fly it. And the other side of that is the software that we build. They call it mission system software. So predicting the orbits and predicting when you're going to, making sure you're not colliding with anything. The command and control for spacecraft, things like that. That's what we do. And in the U.S., the products that we're making are very similar to the Australian, but geared towards the U.S. military for the most part, because they were part of their ecosystem. On the Australian side, we do both defense and civil space work, and both continents together will help each other for commercial satellites. So if somebody's flying a satellite out of the United States, we have an operations center in Colorado and we have the operations center in Adelaide, and they do a handoff in the middle of the flight to kind of keep things moving and keep people working together.
Yeah. So how would you say space sustainability is something that's really important, or not so much do we worry about? Because personally, I think that it's quite important, especially with like space debris and like re-entry. And I think one of the questions from the students did mention that with like all these satellites up there, they're worried that it would, I guess, pollute the skies in the sense that astronomers won't be able to look at the stars anymore. So I just
first of all, I mean, the risk of collision is the risk that you have. Think of the sky as like a highway. It's the data highway for the 21st century, and it's $1 trillion worth of stuff up there, and increasing every day. And what they're doing with the data up there is they're doing applications for banking, finance, agriculture and mining, climate change. Literally every bit of information you want to know about the planet is going to go through space. So if an astronomer, I don't think the astronomers are going to win this one. They're not going to win. Astronomers typically don't have money, right? I mean, I
think, to be fair, they're kind of like, they're like, because we're hearing on the media that mostly like, like space tourism and stuff like that, and people are going to go out and like just have fun. Whereas, people are just like, okay, like what about down here? Like, what about global warming? Shouldn't we focus on that first? And I think like a lot of the space tools and the stuff that aerospace engineers develop is to improve the quality of life for those down on Earth. But it's just, there is a certain aspect of it that which I understand that people are concerned about.
Yeah. So this is actually two questions in one. I love this question because you mentioned space tourism, which when I talk about space sustainability is a totally different kettle of fish. Space sustainability is around and polluting space is taking a very politically kind of charged angle to it. I do think we need to be responsible for space without politicizing it too much. We need to be responsible with it because it is becoming a highway. Space is becoming what air traffic control was in 1925, right? You have a lot of barnstormers out there. There's no systems. Nations aren't talking to each other. We need to get nations. This is kind of one of the things that gets me out of bed in the morning is getting countries to talk to each other, sharing information, sharing data. You have to have that. Otherwise, things are going to start colliding. And that's going to cause different problems, not for the astronomers, but for all this data that's absolutely critical for climate change, absolutely critical for our way of life. and the future where our species is going. I mean, this is really grand kind of thinking. The
Yes.
other question you asked on space tourism, personally, I find that fascinating because now we've been talking about it for a decade, and now it's really happening. You can't stop it now. You physically can't stop it because people are putting money down, and that's the way the world works. You've got to follow that cash, right? And it's the lesson you learn getting older. We could pile it down to one statement: follow the money, right? And if you want to know how the world really works, it's who's paying is setting the stage. And in this case, right now, you've got a small number of very wealthy people paying for it. And what I want to see happen is I want to see the next generation of products and industry manufacturing happening on orbit. Okay, that's the next phase. Right now, the tourism thing, that's gonna blow over. The prices are gonna go down if for human astronauts going into space. Well, astronauts going into space. But the question of what do you do when you get up there? Well, you could throw a ball, you could do the Homer Simpson thing and drink a Duff beer and float around on orbit, or you can make new products. And the next generation of fiber optics, 10 times the efficiency fiber optics are going to be made in space. Next generation of pharmaceuticals. Yeast love microgravity. Microbes love microgravity. You can make the best drugs in space because you can make massive crystals. All these different material properties. The cost of spacecraft are going to go down, tying into space traffic. The other question. The moment you start manufacturing on orbit, it makes it really, really easy to make a spacecraft because you don't have to deal with vibration of launch. If you want to test to see if that spacecraft works in space, you don't need a big chamber and vacuum chamber. You just stick it outside the back porch. That's what you're going to do. So the cost of your spacecraft is going to go down from $300,000 per U, the little cube U, CubeSat, down to $30,000. So Winnie, someday if you choose to have a family, your kid turns to 18 years old, and then you choose to buy them a car for their 18th birthday, you'll buy them a satellite. They'll start their own space company. They'll start contributing to the global story. Maybe that space company isn't hanging around Earth. Maybe it needs to go to the moon. And the astronomers will be happy because you're going to get great astronomy if you put that telescope in space. Much easier to get the data. But the hard bit is getting that telescope in space, right? Yeah. So that solves the astronomer's problem bit.
I think it's also quite difficult as well because there's like space politics involved about like there's no ownership in space, and then some people are like concerned that different countries are going to start fighting about trying to claim a part of space. So that's why we have jobs in space law and policy, I guess. So yeah,
it's going to happen. There's an academic, an author. It's more author than academic these days, but he was famous in Australia for a while. A guy named Jared Diamond, who wrote a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and he also wrote another one called The Fall of Civilizations. And where he looked at the rise and fall of different, he looked at what attributes make a civilization grow and what attributes make them shrink. And his statement was, the reason why people go to war is over resources. Everything else is window dressing. Religion, politics, all that stuff is an excuse for the real reason why people have conflict. And the conflict happens because of a lack of resources. So space, with all the resources that are in space, if we can learn how to capture those resources for Earth, then the 7.5, soon to be 8 billion, by the time we're talking about this, will be 9 and 10 billion people on the planet. Will have the resources to to live, without nearly as much conflict as we've had in our history. So that requires a whole bunch of technical things to do. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to avoid the desire for ownership over resources. That type of media spin is excruciatingly naive. It does not match with the entire history of our species. The only way you avoid it is having so many resources that the pressure, the hunger in a person's belly is reduced. That's the answer to that.
Yes, and that definitely brings me into the last question actually about academia and how I think that space should be more brought up in schools because with all these media posts, they tend to kind of miss the bigger picture, like as you spoke about them having a bit of a spin. And I think that, if more people learn more about space, then we wouldn't have this issue and people would understand, true sustainability and, how to contribute to improve the lives down here at Earth.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. In high schools as well as universities, keep in mind, Australia, that's changing. Growing up in the United States, space was a big part of our lives. I remember when I was 15 years old was when I was homesick with the flu and the space shuttle blew up. That was, but these are national events for us. Like space is part of our blood in a way that it growing up in Australia, you don't hear it as much, so you assume other people don't talk about it. But Australia is actually unique as a nation in that it hasn't been until now a part of your experience. But I think what you're going to find with the space agency and everything I'm seeing happening in the community and the growth, the real national growth in space, is you're going to start seeing people talk about it more. I would say as aerospace students, part of AIAA and AIAA and all that stuff that you're doing as students yourselves, be a part of it, reach out, join groups, talk to each other, and just keep in mind, if you don't hear a lot of noise from it in a sector, watch it change over the years is what I'd suggest on that one.
Yeah. So how come you went into academia? Like, what made you realize that you want to teach others?
I enjoy it. Well, I did the PhD by accident, right? I mean, I was here for a master's. I was going to go back. Yeah, I was 6 months in, and my supervisor said, "You're worthless to me as a master's. I get paid for PhD students. You upgrade, and we'll pay you for it." And he was kind of teasing, but we had a good relationship, and we agreed on the research we were going to do. And I was still going to go back to the States. Remember, 2006, there was nothing here. So and then I got married, right? So that was it. I ended up here. I don't know if that answers your question very well, to be honest.
No, well, yeah, it does. Well, this is my last question before we move on to student questions. Will you ever go back to the United States, or you're stuck here for now?
Well, we have labs in the United. I go back and forth, when there's no COVID to let me. But whether I will dig roots in one continent or another, I don't know. I don't know. I go back and forth. Colorado, like I'm from Colorado. Colorado is such a beautiful state in the United States. Mountains and mountain culture. I really enjoy that. But Australia, I mean, it's been my home for the last 16 years now, longer than 16 years. Long enough. So I kind of got a foot in both continents, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So now we have some student questions. I think some of them have been answered already. Okay. Someone asks, "Are you a dog or cat person?"
Dog person. 100% dog person. Great question.
Yeah, me too. Someone asked, "Are there available roles in aeronautics for international students?"
Depends on the nation. Unfortunately, space, I'm not going to say aeronautics because I'm not an aeronautics guy. Aerospace, yeah, they have their crossovers technically, but as industries are very different. Okay, space is very closely related to defense. I can tell you that the way the rules are set up, if you are from certain countries, you're going to have a hard time getting a job. If you're from a Five Eyes country, it's a lot easier. If you're an Australian going over to the United States, you still got to get a visa. And it's still tough for you to get a job because the preference is going to go to an American citizen. However, I've seen it done many times. I've seen it done. NASA Ames is usually very, and that Silicon Valley area is usually very kind of friendly and open, for the talent. Other states are different. Australia, Saber used to have open to all nationalities. We can't do it anymore. We get too much defense work.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of companies kind of follow along the same path.
Yeah. There's a question. Wait, this is from me. Actually, I submitted one.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so what are the most important qualities of being a CEO?
Persistence, and ability to really love the path that you're on. The ability to stick with the company that you're building. You can't be a looky-loo and be a CEO. You can't be a looky-loo and be a founder. You have to be reasonably good with people. If you're a really good technician and you don't know how to deal with people, then you're probably not going to go too far. My own personality quirks, if ever Saber slows down, it's going to be my fault, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. But yeah, I would say that's it. Persistence, ability to work with people. Any other attributes are icing on the cake. If you got good tech, if you got good creativity, ability to communicate is pretty important. I grew up my mother was a writer, so at her knee she had a wooden spoon. I had to spell correctly, grammar correctly. Not quite the wooden spoon. It's been an exaggeration, but the ability to communicate is important.
Yeah. Someone asked, can you talk to us more about the Delta V Space Hub? What is the new internet in space? And does this mean we'll get faster internet down here?
Delta V Space Hub is a group that I founded back in the day. That's an old group. It's not really very active. In fact, I don't run it anymore. Tim Parsons runs it now. But at the time, it had myself, the guy that runs a startup called Dandelions, a guy named Brian Lim, Eunice W. and Andrew Dempster, so Axer, and Sydney Uni, Eva Cairns. And we kind of use Delta V as a vehicle for staying friends. Right now, I'm running the Wolfpack Space Hub, which is our very kind of incubator specifically for upstream space companies, companies that want to fly rockets, for example, and spacecraft. We help you get money and be successful. What was your other question? You asked a technical question.
Oh, they asked, would that mean we'll get faster internet down here?
Nothing to do with Delta V. Plenty of companies that are looking at doing internet from space. I would keep my eye on AST Sciences. They get some pretty cool tech, but there are others. It's not a Delta V thing. It's just where the market's going.
Yeah. So someone asked, what does a typical day or week look like for you?
Boy, it depends on how crazy things are. Well, I mean, the pandemic days have been, pre-pandemic, I was going back and forth between America and between Colorado and Sydney every other month. So I was doing an international flight every 2 months, which is pretty rough. These days, I usually, get up at 8:30, make a really quick short breakfast, then sit on the screen, check the emails, and check in with the teams. I check in with the business development and check in with the mission control teams. Typically, morning time for me is when the Americans are finishing their work. So just from time zone, 9 in the mornings, when the Coloradans are getting to the end of their day. So I usually check in with my US director at that time as well. But is there something specific that you want to know? I mean, my day is not very exciting.
They didn't specify.
Yeah.
Maybe, okay, maybe what about like a day in the life? Like, how do you get things organized? And yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it's a day in my life. I mean, is pretty pedestrian. Right? I mean, I do emails for a living. I used to be a scientist, and now I answer emails and write proposals and all that jazz. No, I like to dig into the tech sometimes. It annoys my staff because it's micromanaging, right? If I'm doing tech, I shouldn't be, but I just enjoy it. So I'll dig in and check on the machine learning team if they're doing machine learning. We'll do space training once a week. It varies, right? So it's, you know, when things are pretty easy, I like teaching people still. It's still kind of what I enjoy. Casually. And at nighttime, my wife and I will go on a walk just to get the blood pumping again. Doing the COVID thing, she's next door, right? Yeah, that kind of thing. But and I usually like doing a bit of cooking at night and playing the harmonica. You know.
Someone actually asked, like, what's your hobby and how do you have time for it? So is that?
Oh, I don't have time. I take it when I can. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like when Saber was small, I was so I've been doing fencing since this is where the name Saber Astronautics comes from. Is some of our co-founders were fencers, competitive fencers back in the day.
Oh, okay.
So that was my hobby for many years. I was coaching fencing to pay my way through grad school, right? And when Saber was a startup, I was doing a lot of it. But nowadays, and a bit older, so and I don't have time to teach fencing anymore. So just trying to enjoy a bit of music. I play a lot of video games because I'm always a gamer.
What video games actually? I have to ask.
These days, what's on my Steam account, right? So I did a lot of Forex games, but these days doing Elder Scrolls Online. I haven't been fun with that.
Have you played Oblivion?
Oblivion? Oh hell yeah! Play the hell out of Oblivion. Yes. Yes. By the way, your street cred just went like 3 notches with me right now.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's a good game. Yeah, it's a good game.
Tom, who was the creator of it? I forgot his name. Tom Nod or something.
Bethesda Softworks. When I was in high school, I was graduating high school when Bethesda Softworks. So I grew up in a small town called Reisterstown, Maryland, which is a 15-minute drive away from Bethesda. So I remember when those cats first got their first, when they were a startup, they were making their games and they were like selling it off of floppy disks to these, just really kind of,
suspicious.
It sounds totally old school. I just made myself feel old with that, man. Yeah, no, really cool, really cool. Yeah, it's a good company. It's a good company.
So someone asked, if you weren't in the space industry, what would you be doing?
In an alternate universe, I could have stayed in the Army. In fact, the day after I arrived in Australia, they promoted me. I was like, they promoted me and I quit the Army. It's great. I would probably still be doing something science related. I might have stayed in the academic community, teaching. I'd probably still be teaching space. I think for me, growing up, it was space or nothing. The whole Army thing was a distraction. I'd always wanted to do it. I didn't think I was smart enough until I was in my late 20s. And that was the bottom line. I flirted with the idea of being a professional fencing coach in New Zealand. That was like the living the dream, not have any responsibilities, nothing serious anyways. But it's either that or you find some 9-to-5 job doing something that you're good at, and then the rest of your life is living your life, So.
Yeah, I love asking these questions because usually when you ask them, they're like, they were going to do something that's completely different. Like I was either going to be a police officer or an actress, and then now I'm an aerospace engineer. So who knows? You
never know. Look, that's the thing. Like when you're in your young 20s, you know what you want, but life moves you. The wind will blow in a certain direction for everybody, and that direction is different based on your circumstances. But you get to control your sails, right? So I was not a natural person to enter the space industry. I had terrible grades. Yeah, it told you the story. I had bad grades. I joined the Army because I was getting into all these fights in high school. I was a skinny kid with a big mouth, mouthing off to people. So I was fighting all the time. So all right, I'll join the Army, and you know, and you grow up and life changes, and your old passions come back and you adjust, and it's normal, very normal stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so we have, I think, like a few more, like 3. So someone asked, if you could describe Saber Astronautics in 3 words, what would they be?
Operations as a service.
Oh, okay. Very simple. Do you like coffee or tea?
Both.
Both?
I like the American style coffee more than the Australian, which makes my Australian friends very mad at me, because I'll put like vanilla and hazelnut and all the sugary sweet. I'll make it really sweet, like it's at Starbucks. And pumpkin spice latte, I'm all about that.
I've never had that. Like I see the hype about it, but I've never seen it in Australia. Like, do we have that?
Yeah, they have Starbucks in Australia. It's not very.
But they don't have pumpkin spice. I don't.
No, it is a little different. You can find like your egg. You can find like your sweet. The point in the American style is you grind the coffees in the morning. It's drip coffee, so it's a different style than the lattes you're used to, and then they'll make it really sweet. And,
Yeah.
You know, so it's Americans love their sugar. You know, we're all a bunch of sweet tooths. We grow up with it.
All right. Have you gone to space before? And if not, will you?
I'd love to. I have not. I am not an astronaut. I have flown in microgravity. I've done. I've got over 120 parabolas, I think, and with myself. I flew the Space Beer project because we made a beer you could drink in space with Four Pines Brewery, and when we first founded. And we also flew the Dragon Tether with a NASA Flight Opportunities Program. So I know what zero gravity feels like for zero Martian and lunar gravities, but I've never flown into actual space before.
Yeah. And then someone asked, what was the first job you ever had?
Pizza delivery guy at 16.
Oh my God, that's my sister at the moment. I worked at KFC.
Yeah, it's.
We all start off humble.
We all start. I mean, you're 16. You could take what you get. Oh, babysitter at 15.
Oh, okay.
There you go. I was a babysitter for the neighbors. Not sure if that's what that question meant.
Yeah.
After uni, I was in the Army. That was my first job out of my undergraduate. I was a fire support officer. I was a field artilleryman in Europe for the 1st Armored Division, and I was calculating ballistic trajectories using slide rules and a big piece of paper.
Yeah. So the last question is, how did you develop the skill of speaking so engagingly in front of groups?
Practice.
Practice?
I used to be very nervous, really nervous. Sometimes like it hits you. You know, sometimes I get in front of a crowd and you get that wave of adrenaline. I think every actor will tell you the same thing. It's normal. When I was younger, it didn't feel normal. I remember when I was in the Army and I was about 24. I was in Korea. I had to do a briefing to the colonel and the staff, and I was so nervous I almost peed myself. It was really embarrassing. I didn't pee myself. It wasn't that embarrassing. I just looked like an idiot, you know. And then you get word salad like perfectly normal. One of my sergeants gave me some really good advice that I've used to this day. I'll give this advice to you now. When you're giving a presentation or a speech or whatever, you only need to memorize the first couple of sentences. Gets you past the adrenaline. You look really sharp and professional. You could be really sharp and professional for a short period of time using memory. It's hard to do that for everything, right? So if you see every talk I do, I would start out, hello, I'm Jason Held on behalf of Saber Astronautics. I'd like to welcome you to whatever. It's a canned. It's totally canned, and I'll whip it out, right? And then when it's done, then I just talk about what I'm doing rather than memorizing anything. And then you're talking from your own experiences. So you rehearse the first couple of slides, or the first couple of things you're doing, you look really good. And then if you screw it up afterwards, nobody notices, or it doesn't matter as much because you've already built the trust with the crowd, and you've already gotten through your own adrenaline. You've given yourself that confidence, and you know, that's how you do it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the last question, and we went a bit over time, like 4 minutes, but that's okay.
All good.
So yeah, so let's conclude today's podcast. Do you want to say any parting words?
Thank you. Those of you who are nervous about your future, do the best you can, but don't worry about it. Have a work-life balance. Enjoy your friends. The friends that you have now, that you make now in these days, years later, are going to be running things. I call it secret society of friends who rule the world. In every circle I've ever been in that gets anything done, from the creation of the space agency to political bodies to finance to engineering to scientific circles, it usually starts with a group of people who knew each other, who stayed friends, who have trust with each other, and they build things together, right? Secret society of friends who rule the world. Good luck with everything. I'm counting on all of you to enjoy yourselves and do good things while you enjoy it. And good luck.
Yes. So thank you everyone for coming today. If you want to know more about Jason and Saber, we'll attach the website below on our YouTube. So yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.